Hello. Am I the only man in here? No. There's one. There's one. Okay. Hi. Welcome to Pick Your Poison Mystery Night at the Library of Congress. We are thrilled that you're here. Yeah. We want all you mystery fans to feel right at home at the Library of Congress. I'm Clay Smith. I'm the literary director here at the library. Welcome also to our audience who is joining us via live stream. We're excited you are here too. We're going to produce future themed nights around other literary genres and cultural themes, so we want to make sure that you subscribe to our blogs and newsletters and follow our social media so you can learn about future nights. We're talking about comedy night coming up, so yeah. But you are here for the legendary writer Louise Penny, who is in conversation tonight with our Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden. We've created 3 other events here tonight for you all. You needed a ticket for this event. You don't for the other events, so please, we've created this to sort of create a world of mystery all throughout this building tonight, so we encourage you to attend the other events. There is a mystery night puzzle hunt on your brochure. When you entered, there was sort of a grid, and you need that to create that, and that is a very fun game where you get to explore the sort of little corners of this beautiful building. Above us in the room called LJ119 is a panel of novelists starting at 7 o'clock who will be talking about how they create the perfect murder in their novels. And at 8 p.m. back here in the Coolidge Auditorium, we are putting on a show called Who Did It? An Improvised Murder Mystery, where you all will get to sort of yell at the actors and make them do weird things on stage. It's always fun to make actors do weird things, right? And if you want to stay in this venue after Louise and Dr. Hayden are done, you're welcome to. Those of you who want to go to Louise's book signing, she will be signing upstairs, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I also want to let our nonfiction lovers know that on the night of Thursday, November 16th, we are hosting the public intellectual and writer Simon Schama in conversation with writer, public health leader, and surgeon Atul Gawande. Schama's new book is titled Foreign Bodies. It's about our most recent pandemic, but thankfully it's about pandemics much further back in history, the pandemics we all know and love so well. So just like tonight, free tickets are required for that event, and they're available at loc.gov. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Could you please turn off your cell phones and any other electronic devices? Second, I just want you to note that this program is being recorded, and by participating here and being with us tonight, you give us permission for future use of the recording. Okay, so do I really need to introduce Louise Penny and Carla Hayden? Okay, I didn't think so. So they're going to come on stage. They're going to talk for a little bit. There might be a third guest who has 4 legs. That guest's name is Muggins. Don't ask Muggins for a Huggins, because Muggins may not give you a Huggins. That is not my joke. Someone else made that up, and she is backstage, and I want to give credit to her. I'm going to come back up here when Dr. Hayden and Louise are done talking, and we have these 2 mics if you have questions, so I'll direct the Q&A. But for now, I just want to say thank you for being here at Mystery Night, and let's welcome Louise Penny and Dr. Carla Hayden.
Now don't worry, Miss Penny is coming. In fact, here is Miss Penny and Muggins. Look at Muggins.
Muggins.
I know Muggins thinks this is all for her. She's
Yes.
like, oh my.
Yes, it's for me.
You ready
It
for your
is.
close-up?
I would
Look
say
at
that
her.
as a 65-year-old woman with gray hair, I'm often invisible anyway. And I walk down the street with Muggins, and I'm just a hole in the fabric of the universe.
Well, that's where I was really, and this is such a delight. Okay, we're starting out with full disclosure. I kind of begged to do this because I am a mystery fan. And we just, yeah, see?
Yay!
I'm also a dog lover too, so this is like in heaven. But I did because it was apparent, though, in the very first book, when you had Lucy and all that you
banana.
are, and the banana, and that you are a dog lover too.
No, it's true. That character, Lucy, was inspired by the first Golden that my husband and I had, and she was Bonnie, was her name, and she was the wedding gift to each other, and she loved bananas. Michael was pretty sure he didn't want a dog, and I explained that he was wrong. And we ended up with Bonnie, and of course Bonnie totally bonded with her and with him, and ended up in the book.
And I understand that Muggins got to play Bon.
Yes, we just did I don't know if any of you saw it. Did you see the radio play that we did? Or tried to do, right? So it was supposed to be recorded and then go out live. So the guy couldn't figure out how to do the live and then forgot to hit the little red button.
Sounds like me.
Yes, I know. So we had to do it again, but Muggins came on stage and played Lucy, the dog. So, and we'd been practicing for months beforehand, and all she had to do was take the banana, right? So she does this, she falls completely asleep. Comes her big moment, and I have to wake her up, shove a banana in her mouth, and then she goes back to sleep. And then at the very end, when we all stand up and do the bow and take the wild applause, Muggins wakes up, and then because she's been lying down for so long, she stretches, which looks like a bow.
Oh my. Well, your latest book, A World of Curiosities, we see that there is a parallel between the first book, Still Life, and this one, where the professor, someone who goes to work with someone who's damaged and arrogant. And at Yvette, I wanted to smack her. It's Still Life. And I was a little surprised that it's, well, I don't do French too well, so Jean Guy.
Close, very close. It's Jean-Guy.
Jean-Guy.
Yes.
Well, how did that happen? Because do you have a map that you
Of
draw
the
out
story
between
of
all
the-
the things,
the
and that
arcs
he
of the-
becomes this?
No, it's all actually, to be fair, all very organic. When I started Still Life, what I knew was that I wanted it to be a series because I love reading series novels and getting to know the characters and getting deeper into it. But I actually didn't think that the book would be published. I mean, most books, as you know, aren't.
Yeah.
I think 90% of books that are written, or 95%, never get published. So I knew that the writing of it would really have to be reward enough. So I filled it with characters I would choose as friends, and the main character I would marry. As it turns out, I did. And I thought, aren't I smart to create this Armand Gamache? Like, he's fabulous. Then I went down to breakfast one day, and there's Michael reading the paper, and we're chatting, and I'm talking about, I don't know, the eggs are runny in the omelet, and he's talking about world peace. And I realized that I didn't create Armand at all. I just transcribed to the man.
Oh.
But I had no idea where they would grow and where they would go. And I thought, when I started the series, I was thinking of Agatha Christie and Poirot. and how sad it was that Christie grew weary of Poirot very quickly. And I thought that's, that the whole world loves this character except his mother. And I thought, the reason, there may be many reasons, but I think one of them may have been that Poirot never evolved.
Right.
He was essentially the same character in The Mysterious Affair at Styles as he was at the very last. And so I knew I wanted my characters to evolve and in still life, that we have a sense that we have joined a life in progress. Mm-hmm. So there are mysteries. Why has Gamache's career stalled? What is the relationship with the son? Why are things going right and why are some things going wrong? That we haven't just created a human being, we've joined him in midlife. But I had no idea where it was going to go.
No idea.
No idea.
So, about the third book, were you getting an idea?
Jesus, she sounds like my editor.
Well, that's the other thing. Librarians have two fantasies and things that they like to do: either own a bookstore or be an editor.
Really? But
Yeah,
not
that's
a writer. Not a writer.
No, because we usually don't have talent.
Like
too much.
wants to
Yeah. So, but being an editor, so that's what I was. So by the third or fourth book,
it's interesting that and I found this fascinating, that most crime writers get 3-book contracts to begin with, which is very unusual because normally you'd get a 1-book contract and see how it sells. But crime writers, they tend to give you 3-book contracts, and I had a 3-book contract to begin with, because they figure that it takes that long to see if you really do know what you're doing, to see where the series is going, to see if you gain an audience. And so I think that was very generous of the publishers. But yeah, I'm not trying to think where things probably changed. And I actually think it was the 4th book.
The 4th,
really.
Almost.
Where I began to see where I could take Armand. I think there was a scene in the 4th book where Armand and Jean-Guy, I'm trying to remember because it was a while ago that I wrote it, but Armand and Jean-Guy are in the place where the statuary is made, I believe. And Armand talks about the burghers of Calais. And I think that was when I began to see, oh my God, I can bring in all this other ephemera, all these other curious little details into the books. And so I think that's where I began to see that there could be more riches to explore.
And I'm going to be saying it the right way, too, for a long time. Now, he repeats the 4 phrases: vital to working in homicide, I don't know, I need help, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
You see, now you have that written down. Could you have done it not written down?
It depends on which day. I probably have said those things, not in that order. So yes, because that really stuck with me.
And it's obviously stuck with me, but I must admit that when I, often in front of these lovely people, and I start saying the phrases, and invariably I forget one of them. Yeah. And it's often a different one. But so I'm glad you have it written down.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. It takes care of everything.
That's true.
It's like, hey, I'm sorry.
And a 5th one could be I forget.
That's what you need to add.
Yeah. Those came long before I started writing. And I heard them once, and it was from Michael, my husband. And he was chairing a meeting. We weren't going out at the time. We certainly, obviously weren't married. We were nothing. He was just Michael chairing a meeting. And he opened the meeting. Normally you open the meeting by calling it to order, and you read the minutes from the last meeting and blah, blah, blah. And he paused, and there was complete silence, and he said, I'd like to tell you the 4 phrases that lead to wisdom. And he quoted them, and then paused, and then went on with the meeting. And that's it. He didn't talk about them, didn't say why he said them. And I just looked at the man astonished. And I didn't think at the time I'm going to marry him, but he sure,
You were thinking something. That's when the
That could be
meeting
one of the
turned. Yeah,
phrases.
that's
I
when the
want
meeting
you.
turned for you a little bit, didn't it? Wow. And so that's how it started.
That's how it started, yes. And they are. They're very wise sayings, and they're very difficult. It takes a lot of humility to be able to say, I was wrong. You know, it's one thing to say, I realized, you're right. But it's another thing to say, I was wrong.
That takes a whole different thing.
That does. Yeah.
So did you think you're starting Still Life, and you said you met Michael before,
Yeah.
and so what did he think about you with the writing and all that?
He was I was a journalist with CBC Radio for many years. And I did live current affairs shows, so I interviewed politicians and economists and all the rest of it. And we did chases, things that would come up, and you'd suddenly throw people on the air and do the interviews. They're all very exciting, but also fairly stressful. And I'm in Quebec, so we had the referendums on sovereignty, and which are very divisive and very emotional. And it all has to do with the future of Canada. Is Canada going to break apart? And the aspirations of the Québécois, which I understand, but you know, I'm clearly more of a federalist. And so it was a very difficult time to cover that. And I came out of the back of covering. I was hosting the national coverage of the radio coverage of the referendum night. And we were told beforehand that the no side, which was the federalist side, which was keep Canada whole, keep Quebec in the Confederation, would lose, and that Quebec would separate. That was what all the polls were saying, and we all know what polls say, right, these days. But we believed it, and so we went on air believing that this was really the last day that Canada would be whole. And as it turns out, Quebec, the no side won, the we side, the yes side lost. But it was such a narrow margin. It was so close that everybody came away from it feeling shattered, like there was no winner. We were all bruised. And I crossed a line at that point and said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. And I had become the sort of person I wouldn't want to work with, which is not a good place to be. And I'm embarrassed to sit in front of you and say that Canadian politics brought me to my knees.
It's all right, Louise. We all needed that. So did you think when you were starting out Still Life, you weren't sure? So back to you and Michael and talking about, okay, I'm quitting this
Right. Well, what
stressful
happened
thing.
was
Yeah.
I came home. I was and come home every day for a while, just clearly not happy. And Michael said, if you want to quit work in order to write that novel that I know you've always wanted to write, I'll support you. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, that was right up there, right up, almost equal to when he said, I love you. I'll support you. And
He was saying
meant
it then. Yeah.
Because, you know, when a man says, I love you, that can mean a lot of things. But when he says, I'll support you, then there is an implied kind of a contract there. And he did. He supported me. And I suffered 5 years of writer's block. 5 years. I quit work, and you know, in a grand gesture, I may have implied I was going to write the best book ever.
You did pretty well.
The people would come up to me on the street who knew me from the radio and think, how's the book going, dear? Now, this is 3 years into not writing, right? So if being a journalist taught me one thing, it was how to lie. So I said, it's going fine, bitch.
I can just tell you all, she uses that term affectionately.
I know. I'd met her like for 30 seconds. I said, you're a bit. And you laughed, God bless you.
I laughed because there were people who work with me, and I said, I bet they say that. you just said that.
So Michael supported me and believed in me and never never doubted, never questioned. And his role as the book was coming along, Still Life, and he was taking a painting course at the time, he'd retired. And so he'd go into the field with his easel and he'd paint, and I would have my laptop and I'd be writing, and I would show him what I'd written, and he said, oh, this is the best. This is genius. And I admire people, I do, who are married to their biggest critic. I don't want to be. There are people who are paid to criticize me. I don't need to be married to someone who will. I want, because it's scary. You know how scary it is, how vulnerable you are. I want to hand Michael, or wanted to hand Michael a blank sheet and have him say, this is fabulous. And he would.
So the writer's block, so 5 years, so what was it that...
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drilling down on my pain. That, I realized in retrospect, I didn't realize at the time what it was. I realized it was fear. It was just terror. I was literally paralyzed by fear that the one thing I'd always wanted to do, right, the only thing I wanted to do was write, and I wasn't doing it. And suppose I couldn't. It was like one of the subplots of Waiting for Godot, you know, that maybe it's better not to test the dream. You know, just keep it a dream. And here I was. I had everything in front of me. I wasn't working. I had a supportive husband. I was financially secure because of his generosity. And I still wasn't writing. And it was terrifying. And then a few things had to happen. As a journalist, I covered a lot of tragedies, and you realize that while they appear to come out of the blue, they actually don't. It's a series of small things, often overlooked, that have to come together in order for the one big thing to happen. But the same is true of wonderful events in our lives. It's often this accumulation of this parade of details that had to come together. And for me, it was that Michael and I moved out of Montreal into this small village some of you might recognize. I fell in with a group of women. I realized how important the people around me are. These are creative, smart, courageous women, all who were in the arts in one way or another. So they were painters and dancers and poets and writers and musicians. And we would get together, the group was called Les Girls. And we would get together once a month at the coffee shop and have croissants, and they would talk about their process. And they invited me to be one of Les Girls, even though I said, I'm not actually writing. And they said, well, do you consider yourself a writer? And I said, yes, I do. And they said, then you get to decide. No one else gets to define you. You say you're a writer, then you're a writer. Come and join us. So I got to listen to what they said, and I got to see that it's a process. And I thought I had to sit down at my laptop and get it right the first time. And of course you can't. If I picked up a tennis racket, would I expect to be in Wimbledon the next day? Of course not. And yet I expected I could sit down at my laptop and write a book, which I couldn't do. The other thing, though, that was so fascinating with the Les Girls is that I went to their art openings and their symphonies and the music, their poetry readings, and some were triumphs and some were less than triumphant. But it didn't kill them. I saw that it didn't kill them, and that what was killing me was not trying. The trying and having it disappointing was just another day. They still got up, they got dressed, they walked down Main Street, and they were magnificent. The final thing that had to happen was that I still remember, I can still feel the bedspread under my hands. I was sitting on the side of the bed. Michael used to call me a horizontalist. Spent all day just trying to get my feet up on something. So I was sitting on the bed, and I looked at the bedside table, and there was a stack of to-be-read books. And I read widely, as most of us do, but very well represented was crime fiction. And I had one of those aha moments, those moments of clarity where I thought, oh my God, I just need to write a book for myself. That I've been trying to write a book that my mother will be proud of. that my former colleagues will be jealous of, that my, the person next door will be in awe of, to impress the person who voices my GPS. Just, the approbation, the approval of others was such a tyranny in my life, and probably had been all my life. And if I was going to achieve the one thing I knew I was put on earth to do, I had to let that go. And I had to be proud of myself, and I had to write a book for me that I would read. That's it, a book I would read. And I knew that I wasn't different from anyone else. If I enjoyed reading it, there's a pretty good chance a few others would too. Or not, but I would love the writing of it. And I went right downstairs and I drew the map of Three Pines. I still have it. It's up on my corkboard. And I drew a list of characters and transcribed Gamache, as it turns out.
Wow. And now talk about an aha moment.
Yeah, no, that really was on every level a revelation, because I hadn't realized the role fear had played all my life. And then right now I have, it used to be right where I write in front of me, but now, because I've moved, it's now by the front door, and it's a poster of the final words of the poet Seamus Heaney, who on his deathbed said to his wife, Noli to Mary, which means be not afraid. So I say to myself every day, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, go deeper, you can do this, you can do this. Even now, 19 books in, don't be afraid, take a chance, be courageous.
Can't wait for 20.
Good, you see, you're
doing
channeling
that.
my editor.
Yeah, hey, that's the next life. Next thing. So go back to, you said earlier that you always wanted to be a writer. So how old were you then? And were you a reader and a writer? Go back to that.
Yeah, I was a very, because of fear, I guess. Now that I, have thought about it a little bit, I was a very fearful child. I was afraid of everything, primarily other children.
Well, they can be mean.
Sorry?
They can be mean.
Were you afraid of other children growing up?
And rightfully so. Yeah, when you're a little different, sometimes they're not kind.
No, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't, it got to the stage where when I was naughty, which wasn't very often because I was quite a good little child, quite a rule follower, but when I was naughty, as punishment, my mother would send me outside to play.
Yeah. She knew.
She knew. I just wanted to be in my room. My favorite place is in the bedroom, reading. Yes, exactly. So that was me as a child, and I was reading. I was very afraid of spiders, as most children are, and many adults. It was on the verge of phobia, and I was reading Charlotte's Web, and yeah, I know. I think I may have been.
Look at the cover?
I know. Wouldn't you have thought? I may have been a little slow as a child. But I was about halfway through. I know. To be fair to my 8-year-old self, I knew that Charlotte was a spider.
So you wanted.
Yes, clever me. So what happened was, in that instant that was life-changing, was that I realized that I didn't want anything bad to happen to Charlotte, that I loved Charlotte. And in that instant, my greatest fear was lifted. And for a child whose entire day is prescribed by doing the least fearful thing, to have the most fearful thing taken out of her life, it was magic. And that magic is in the word. That magic is in the story. And if the reading was that powerful, how powerful could writing be? And so I became a lifelong reader, obviously, and I already was committed to that, but I knew at that stage that I wanted to be a writer as well. I wanted to tell the stories. And
decide how it ends and
yes.
what's going to happen and have that control.
That's right. No, that's. I think that is part of it, is having, and people ask, especially when there are children involved, and which is, and having to write some of those scenes. Does it not scare you, or is it not upsetting? And it is. I mean, because I have to feel it. If I'm not feeling it, I can't put it on the paper. but I know where it's going, and I know why it's happened, and I know what the resolution will be, and that makes it a lot easier. The sense in a world out of control, there's a lot of comfort in having one thing you can control.
And you can decide. Now, you mentioned, too, art. Some of the ladies were artists and things like that, and Clara definitely. How did that part come in? Because I really wanted to see Jane's house.
Oh, Jane's house. You know, people write to me to say, because Jane's house isn't in any of the subsequent books.
Yeah.
And so they write, and it's a reasonable question. What happened to Jane's house? It's still there. Why don't you ever describe it? And I realized that I put myself in a bit of a jackpot, because I can't describe the house because that will totally ruin the first book. So I can't mention it. I mean, I guess I could mention that it exists, but nobody could ever go in it or talk about the art, because that will blow the entire plot of Still Life. It's a very artistic community that I live in, and I don't know if you believe in ley lines, but there's a lot of people who think that there's a crossing of ley lines right where this community is, and so it becomes a hub for creativity. But art, drawing, paintings, that form of art, and I think it all comes from the same taproot, right? Whether it's music or writing or poetry or dance, it comes out, it has different branches, but it's the same taproot. But art, painting wasn't part of the conversation growing up. Music was, literature was, but not art. We had it on the walls, but we never went to museums. But Michael's grandfather was a professional artist, and Michael was a talented amateur artist. And so when we would go to cities, we would go immediately to the gallery, the art gallery, the museum. And I just wanted to get to the gift shop. I mean, I
knew I liked
found
you.
that. And Michael wanted to look at every painting. I have to tell you, it's exhausting. But what I describe, because still art doesn't speak to me the way music does, and literature, but I learned through Michael a certain appreciation. But what I describe, and for me the masterpiece isn't necessarily the work of art, it was Michael looking at it. And that's what I describe. I describe what art does to people, and that I could see and that I could feel.
Yeah, you could say warrior uteruses.
Warrior uteruses. Oh, I hate to tell you that actually a friend of mine created a series of warrior uteruses. Can you imagine? And then we were all sort of wondering, like...
Don't want to...
No.
It's okay.
I have one for you backstage.
Oh, boy. With the bouffant hair and sculptures made out of old tractor parts and everything. I mean, it was just so much. So what about Clara, though? Even though it was art, did you feel a particular...
I for many years thought I was Clara. I felt like Clara. I think it's in Still Life, where she describes that at 2 p.m, what she's doing is brilliant, and at 3 a.m, it's a piece of merde. And that's how, as a writer, I feel. I think, you know, as I'm doing it, I mean, clearly, if I'm writing it, it must be genius. And then at 2 a.m, I wake up and think, oh my God, what have I done? Yeah, so I understand that insecurity, and yeah.
Yeah, Clara.
Yeah, and I like Clara, and I like the chaos that she lives in, and that she's a good soul. But then I've evolved as the series has gone on. Can you guess into who?
Off with their heads.
You're banished.
You become Ruth?
Yeah.
Well, you did call me that backstage.
That's true. There is a certain evidence.
Yeah, that is.
Boy,
you did say
you got
that.
A tough audience.
So is Ruth. So is Ruth. Oh, just one more. Because, well, Clay is coming up, and when Clay comes up, it's time for Q&A.
Right,
I'm
for
going
you
to
guys.
do that. So I just have to ask you, though.
Yes.
Because the cozy mystery. What do you think of that term? Because the village, I want to live there.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate it partly because it's code in many quarters for superficial. I think even genre annoys me. I think there's no distinction between good writing and bad writing, and whether you're writing romance or speculative fiction, or there's no need to ghettoize. Just, it's all literature. Some of it you like, some of it you don't like. I don't even make a distinction between self-published and I mean, who cares? I have such respect for anyone who starts writing a book, never mind finishes it, never mind publishes it, whether you do it yourself or get a publisher to do it. I mean, gosh, you know, we have other things to talk about as a society rather than, you know, whether the book is self-published or not. Let's celebrate it all. This is a big tent. And I have no time for cozy. I have no time for noir. It's just, you know, is it well written or not? Does it speak to you or not?
Do you like it? Well, I'm like, okay, come on, Clay. Let's share. I have to share. Darn.
Spectacular.
Look. Look, Muggins responds to applause.
Yes.
You know, this is like, oh, okay.
So after that Ruth comment, I'm not sure that you all should be allowed to ask questions. But,
Thank you, Clay.
it's now time for people who want to ask questions. Just please come down to either microphone. Don't be shy.
Or maybe we could take one to him.
Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it on? I can't hear it.
Keep talking and we'll adjust the microphone. Yeah.
You know what? I'll repeat the question if you can't hear.
Just have to pull it up a little. Pull the mic up a little bit. Just talk right. Just sing.
She's wondering if I've had a book that's gone somewhere that I hadn't planned. To be fair, most of them do. And I don't always get it right. It's that balance between planning, and I have a notebook for every book, and it's got the divisions, and it has quotes and character and plot and structure. So I make notes for a lot of it. So I have some idea, and when it sort of starts to congeal, then I know it's time to write. But I don't want to have such a grasp on it that I'm strangling it. So there has to be space for it to breathe, for the grace notes to come in, for the unexpected, which is also why my first drafts are really soft and smelly. I mean, they're bad because I've explored this and that and the other thing, the unexpected. And then second draft and third draft and fourth draft, it's about clarifying. So
Let's go over here.
And don't throw those drafts away.
don't throw the drafts away.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for your books. They're so rich and full, and I want to know how you decide what the characters are going to eat, because your descriptions of the food and the drink are so good, and that's what I want to eat and what I want to drink as soon as I'm reading the book.
So I have a question, and I will answer that. But if there was a cookbook, would anyone here buy it?
Yes.
Where's
Or do a shop too, so that if we didn't want to cook it, buy it.
It would come with, for you, it would come with a chef.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good to know, because we are considering it, but they're not sure if there would be enough people to buy
yeah.
it. And that's what I think, too, because I say people, and I understand that if you're looking for a menu, you go, or a recipe, you go online. But this would be added value. There would be context, never mind, you know.
And it could be a gift book, and you give a gift book, and you start the person out, and you wrap it.
All right.
Thank you.
It depends sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time on the season. When I write, I have a pile of poetry books and a pile of cookbooks, and a dog at my feet and the fireplace on. It's as spectacular as you can imagine. I mean, who would have thought? So it's the season and the meal. And sometimes what I've just had, if I've just been out for a wonderful meal, I'll often ask the owner or the chef if I can take the menu home with me. And there are some wonderful Quebecois cookbooks out, so I will often refer to those. And it's, what I feel like. So it's as personal as that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for asking.
So I wonder if there are future collaborations with other new writers like Hillary Clinton in the future.
Yeah, it's such a coattail, eh? That woman, she just, leapt on my coattails and... People ask if we're going to write another one, a sequel to State of Care.
You should.
But the only problem is, and we would love to, because it was also set up at the very end as though there could be a sequel, and we loved writing the characters, Ellen and Betsy. The problem was it was written in the pandemic, when we had nothing else to do.
Oh.
So we would Zoom with each other, FaceTime really, at night. Well, at night, it was like 6:30, we were both in bed in our flannel pajamas. And she would mock me endlessly because my flannel pajamas happened to have moose on them. and we'd talk about the book and where it was going and what we should do. But we had the time. And we don't really right now have the time. So there's no... And collaboration is something, it's something very different. And you have to really trust the person, and the person has to trust you. And what was beautiful about that is that not only were Hillary and I friends beforehand, but we bring something different. She obviously brings all of her huge experience of Secretary of State and the geopolitical insight that she has, which I don't have, but I know how to write a crime novel and a thriller. So we the only time that we got into a bit of a discussion, and it wasn't even with her, it was with Bill, where there was a scene where we had the Secretary of State going to, actually I had written this particular scene, going to Iran without telling the president. And she said, no, I don't think that's right. And then in the background I hear Bill saying, there's no way that would happen. And I was just about to argue, I said, well, yes, it would. Until I realized who I was arguing with. But, yeah, maybe he wins, they win.
Hi, thank you. Many of your books live in some very dark places and deal with dark themes. Mm-hmm. How do you spend so much time in those places and emerge out the other side?
Oh, that's a lovely question. And it goes to one of your questions about that. I've like most of us here, you don't get gray hair without having had some pretty dark times. But I've come out the other side of each of them. Well, the earliest one in particular, where I really didn't think I was going to emerge from it, but I came out the other side understanding, and this is a theme through the books, and it's a line from Auden in his poem to Melville, where he said, goodness existed. That was the new knowledge. His terror had to blow itself quite out to let him see it. So the books are about terror. And I understand, I know that. And I don't mean the exterior terror, which is bad enough. It's the interior. It's what we do to ourselves by our perceptions often. But that had to disappear. And I know that goodness exists. So I can write about the darkness because I know that there is light.
I think we have time for one last question.
I'm a super fan. I have so many questions, but I'll ask you what should be an easy one. I'm always fascinated to know what authors are reading. You could name 2 or 3 books you've loved recently.
I'm so glad you asked that because we started off in the green room talking about
Josephine Tay.
Josephine Tay. Who here knows Josephine Tay?
All right.
That was your.
Yeah, that's
that was
ours.
that
That was
your
my
introduction.
Yeah, my aunt, because I was reading all kinds of historical fiction and stuff like that, and she said, "Try this," and it was Josephine Tay, and that was it.
Yeah, and I'll still go back to Josephine Tay. And my favorite, often many people's favorite is, oh my God, what was it? What's the history one? The Daughter of Time. But my favorite is called The Franchise Affair, which I thought was brilliant, which I didn't read for a long time because it's got such a stupid title. Franchise. I mean, it didn't mean franchise when she wrote it. It didn't mean McDonald's. But these days it seemed like it did. But right now I read a lot of nonfiction now when I'm writing, and that's the only sadness in my life right now, and a life that is much better than I have any right to expect, that I can't read crime fiction anymore. So because I don't want to be influenced. And I read to relax, and I find if I'm reading crime fiction, I'm always analyzing. Why is that working? Why isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So I read a lot of nonfiction. I've just finished David Grann's book, but not the one, the Killers of the right. It was the one he wrote about the ship.
The Wager.
Yes, The Wager. Fabulous book. Well, of course, all of his are, but yeah. So that's. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Smart questions. Just want to tell you a little bit about the book signing. I do encourage you to follow Louise upstairs to the north side of the mezzanine. That is button 2 on the elevator. It's just above the Great Hall. We have her books for sale there. If you want your books personalized by her, buy the books and get in line. If you just would like some books signed by her, we have some signed book plates, Library of Congress book plates, so you don't need to wait in the line. Someone will be coming through the line with a Post-it note if you do want the book personalized, and if you'll just use the little pencil and write your name on it, we will have it signed by Louise very easily. 2 books limit per person, please. No photos, please. And as a reminder, if you want to stay in this venue for the improv show, you're welcome to, but we also encourage you to experience everything here at Mystery Night because we created it for you. So let's thank Dr. Hayden and Louise Penny.
Let's thank Louise. And look, Muggins. And Muggins.
Amazing.
Look at Muggins. Muggins, yes, look. Look, look, look. Come on.